So I want to thank everyone for coming out. We had a really good turnout today. There's over 165 people that have registered for the event. It's a much bigger crowd than we'd originally expected, but we're super glad to see that everybody's really interested in learning more about web accessibility. This is a really important initiative. It has some elevated importance over the last while, and it's something we feel that is a really important thing for our site managers and editors to know about. So a couple of things just to get started. I wanted to mention first off that there's a link to the slides there. I know when we share our links on our screens that the slides are nice and small. So if you want to pay attention and follow along on the slides yourself, you can go to that McGill short link that's listed on the slide there. The other thing I wanted to mention, we've got a packed schedule today, and I'm expecting there's going to be a lot of questions. So if you look to the right of the screen, you'll see there's a Q&A panel that you can use. We're going to try and keep an eye on the questions as we go along and answer them as we go along so that we can hopefully cut down on the amount of questions we'll see at the end of the session. But if you could put your questions in there, you should get an answer. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we will try and get to it during the Q&A section at the end. All right. So here is a rundown of your presenters today. We're really pleased to have a multi-department team here. So Rachel Desjardins from the Office of the Provost and Vice Principal Academic is going to be presenting quite a bit of content today. So we're really glad to have Rachel's input. It's going to be a bit of a different angle than you might have heard with our web services presentations in the past. And we think it'll be really useful for folks. Rachel is our accessibility advisor, by the way. So the rest of us are all from digital communications and external relations. So you have Simone Lebon, who is our digital content specialist. Myself, I manage your digital communications, Joyce Peralta. Heidi Stroll is with us. She's manager digital design. And our superstar work study student, Daniel Zhang, who is our web communications assistant. And he is going to be presenting a section on creating captions for videos. So I'm just going to send the link to somebody else who doesn't have it. I think we're going to be good. Looks like most people have been able to log in so far. So far, so good. All right. So why is web accessibility important? As you know, at McGill, we aim to create an environment that is inclusive, diverse, and accessible, and that's really important to us. And this extends to our digital spaces as well. So our websites need to be inclusive, accessible, and accessible to all users, regardless of the circumstance that they're using to connect to our websites or other challenges they may be dealing with. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to go into what is web accessibility. I think the biggest takeaway that we had, we recently surveyed the community and asked folks what it was that, or if they felt that their sites were accessible. And the report or the response that we got back wasn't a great success. We found out that most people didn't feel that their sites were accessible or that they weren't sure what web accessibility was or how to make their sites accessible. So we're going to go through that today. We're going to talk about some accessibility how-tos. We're going to talk about additional considerations for vHost and non-WMS sites. We're going to go into the actual accessibility requirements for university websites outlined by the government of Quebec, and then we'll have a checklist at the end of things to do next. And one of those things, just to remind you, we have our hackathon coming up at the end of the month. Hopefully most of you had signed up for that. That will give you the opportunity to do some of these things with some training and support from us if you need it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over now to Rachel to take it away. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you. So just to set the stage and go over what exactly is web accessibility. Well, when we talk about web accessibility, the World Wide Web Consortium defines it as websites, tools, and technologies are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. More specifically, people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web as well as contribute to it. And I think those are the things that you want to keep in mind as we move forward in this presentation. I'm going to talk about some of the barriers that might come up with accessing websites and why making a conscious effort to make your website accessible can benefit not only users with disabilities experiencing those barriers, but a wider range of users than you might have originally thought. So, for example, we'll start with vision. If you want to make sure that you're minimizing the barriers, the visual barriers to the information on your website, you're going to want to make sure that you provide alt text, avoid color reliance. Color reliance is using only color to convey information. You make sure that you're using descriptive links. Don't hide your text and images, and structure the page logically with headers. And if you're thinking to yourself, I have no idea what any of this means, you're in the right presentation because my colleagues on this call will be breaking down the how-tos as we move forward. Who does this benefit? Well, obviously, we're gonna have immediate benefits to blind or low vision users of your website, but also colorblind users, users using smart devices on a smaller screen, users who are aging. Think about any temporary barriers. So if my glasses are broken or my contacts are dry that day, and users in variable environments such as bright sunlight or low internet connectivity. So these are some of the benefits that minimizing visual barriers can have on your web pages. There's also barriers to hearing. And what you want to do when you're thinking about minimizing those barriers, you're going to ensure that audio information is available to all users. And that means including captioning or transcript for videos containing audio. You're providing alternatives to audio only content. So you want to think, if I couldn't hear anything on this website, could I still have access to this information? And that includes the videos you post, your podcasts, or other information that you're posting online. When you are making a an audio recording, you're minimizing the background noise, and you're also offering alternative means of communication other than the telephone for contact purposes. So the only way to get hold of you should never be just using the phone, an email address, a physical address in non-COVID times are great examples of doing that. And this benefits for hard of hearing users. Users in environments where audio cannot be turned on, for example, if you're in public transit, if you're in a library, many of us have had experiences where we are actually watching videos or listening to audio without actually listening with our ears, we're instead reading the transcript. And again, smart device users, aging users, and users with temporary barriers such as ear infections or just in a noisy environment, your kids are playing loudly next door. Those are all benefits to minimizing barriers to audio. We also want to think about the physical accessibility of your content. And when you're thinking about physical accessibility with web page design, you're going to want to reduce the physical effort needed to navigate your page. So by avoiding small links, closely spaced interactions, and teeny form fields, you're minimizing the reliance on fine motor skills. You're also going to think about the navigation and ease of navigation for your page. So you provide shortcuts to avoid tiring users with too much typing or scrolling or clicking or any other mechanical movement. So some examples is on this page block and anchors. This benefits users with physical disabilities, but also chronic pain conditions. I worked with both students and employees at the university who, have shoulder, hand, arm injuries, who benefit from more accessible physical content. Again, the variety of users who benefit are also those who use different types of assistive technology. So we might think about assistive technology as, a screen reader, but it can also be different hardware that people are using. So not everyone uses a keyboard and a mouse. Some people use touchscreen, voice commands, etc. to navigate their web spaces, and that's one example of variability that you can plan for. Then the next two variations in accessibility that we'll be talking about today is thinking about reducing barriers to cognition or processing. And that can also be attention span. You're going to want to make sure that you're ordering content by priority or importance. I can't tell you the number of times as a student at McGill, people would tell me, well, all that information is on the website, but it would be hidden at the bottom, whereas it was quite important information. And this is especially important for cognitive and processing barriers, but is also good practice for all users. Using plain language, avoiding non-literal content such as sarcasm, irony, different senses of humor that may not be conveyed across cultural boundaries is something to keep in mind. You're going to want to make sure that you're defining acronyms the first time they're introduced on each page. So don't assume that just because you defined it on your homepage that everyone understands when they're clicking around on your website. To left align text instead of justifying it, and using boldface instead of underlining or italics. In addition to those with cognitive learning or neurological disabilities, you're also benefiting non-native English users, those with temporary barriers such as concussions, or you're just really tired that day, and aging users. A few other best practices that fall in this category is to break up dense blocks of writing, to use the structures of headings and bullets for your numbered list, images and multimedia to support your text, descriptive links, which I've already mentioned, and providing prompts and reminders during multi-page transactions, and making sure that your layouts are consistent and simple. So I wanted to take the opportunity. I talked a little bit about assistive technology, and I wanted to showcase one of the technologies that users might be using to navigate your website. And this, I'm gonna open with a caveat that I am not a screen reader user, so I'm showing this to you as a demo and not as an actual user of this technology, but it gives you a sense of how different types of assistive technology can interact with your website. And so I'm using this as an example, and I'll share my screen here, and give me a second to pull it up. And here we go. One moment. There we go.
Link. Skip to main content. Heading level 1. McGill University. Admissions. Research. Student life. Why Montreal. About McGill. Link. Heading level 2. Made to brave the greatest challenges. Heading level 2. Made to forge the way forward. Visited. Link. Apply now. Link. Photo of the Faculty of Arts building. Enter your keywords. Enter your keywords. List box pop-up. Menu pop-up combo box. Search for programs. People. Services. Search. Button. Heading level 2 items. An entrepreneurial spirit. Made by creativity and passion. An entrepreneurial spirit. Made by creativity and passion. Made by McGill logo. Image. Visited. Link. Photo of Charles Omu. The birth of an idea mobile app could save lives by using AI to detect respiratory distress in newborns. Visited. Link. Photo of Chloe Ryan combining.
That's the end of the little demo. And I show that because I think it's interesting to expand your idea of how users are actually interacting with your web page. And so that's something called VoiceOver. It's available on all iOS devices. It's quite a popular tool amongst blind and low vision users, but can also be benefiting others as well. And that demo just shows you how the screen reader reads out an example of a web page. So we're gonna go actually into the how-tos, and I'm gonna preface by just talking about alt text before I hand it over to Joyce. Alternative text is one of the tips that I mentioned as something that supports with accessing visual content. And what alt text is that these tags describe visual information for screen reader users and remain invisible to the eye unless the image fails to load. And I'll give you an example. Here on the screen I have a picture that I stole from McGill's Instagram page. And if I were writing alt text for that and wanted to use that image on my website, I would probably describe it as 3 McGill students wearing hats watching a football game. And a few of the characteristics of alt text tags is that they are concise, that they identify important details, that they don't start with image of or picture of. I don't know if you noticed in the demo, but the screen reader reads out, heading level 2, picture, and then reads the alt text. And so by putting the proper alt text tag, you're having the screen reader have a coherent description of what the visual content is. And you're also going to want to make sure that you're providing both the content and the function of the image. If you want to share something like a complex image, a chart, or a graph, an alt text tag might not be the best way to do it, and we'll have a few examples of other ways that this is done in the WMS as we go along. And I'd like to hand it over to Joyce to take us through how to do this in WMS.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm actually going to pass it to Simon because we changed our order. So I'm going to pass it to Simon to get into this part, and then I'll be following up with some additional recommendations later.
Oh, Simon, you're on mute. Now everyone knows it's a live event because we wouldn't have included this stuff in a pre-recorded session.
All the time. All the time. All right. So in order to add alt text in the WMS, you have different tools you can use. On the left side, you see there an event that happened at McGill. And the alt text says crowd of people at a conference event watching a presentation. So that's the layout you will have when adding an alt text to an image block. And on the right, you will see a different layout here, and that's when you add an alt text to an image on a page. So basically, both are present in the WMS and would encourage you to use them for accessibility. It's super useful, as Rachel mentioned and also presented in our demo. You can also add alt text to an image in your site file list. So when you go to your workbench in the file list, you can edit an image and you will see at the bottom there alt text. So there are multiple ways you can add alt text to images in the WMS. And if you have any question, of course, you can always ask us and we can help you if you have trouble finding it. Another thing you can have in the WMS is images that shows multiple like structure here, the complex diagrams, and one of the recommendations that we have here is to provide a text version of a complex image like that, since you won't be able in the small alt text to describe what's in this diagram. So here's an example that's available on our web services site, the content toolkit, the core content strategy that Daniel actually did. And when you click on the text version here, it will automatically pull the text description that is more complex than just a regular alt text with a button to return to the diagram. So if you want to present complex information, that is one way you can do it in the WMS. And I will pass the ball now to Daniel, who is our expert now in time-based media. So how can I pass the ball? All right, there. Oh, sorry. We did that at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Simon. So now that we've talked about ways to make images and diagrams more accessible, we can talk about some time-based media. So time-based media includes audiovisual content, such as a YouTube video or an audio recording of an interview. Note that these accessibility requirements are not required if the audio or video is a media alternative for a specific text. According to the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, there's slightly different requirements depending on if the media is audio or video. So for audio, you need to provide an alternative text that provides a descriptive identification of the media. For example, if you had a recording of an interview, you would want to make the transcript documenting everything that was said. So one easy way to do this is through Office 365's Word app. Note that this only works on the web version of the app. So on the menu bar in the Home tab, there should be a dictate option, and when you click the drop down, you should be able to select transcribe as an option. This will bring up a new menu where you can choose to either upload a pre-recorded audio clip, or you can record something new and Word will automatically generate a transcription for you. Once it finishes processing either the pre-recorded or live recording of the audio, you'll be able to edit or export the transcription to wherever you want. So for videos without sound, something similar to images can be done, where you can just have an alt text that provides identification of the things that happen in the video. However, for videos that do have sound, you need to have captions. So one of the better ways to do that is to do it through YouTube. Because YouTube embedding is already integrated in the WMS, this is a great option for us. To caption a YouTube video, simply head over to the Creator Studio in the account that you uploaded the video with. When you select the video that you want to edit, in the details section there should be an option to add subtitles. When you upload a video to YouTube, they'll automatically generate subtitles for you, and it should be fairly accurate and good enough for the purposes of accessibility. However, it's still recommended to go through the subtitles and make sure that there aren't any big mistakes. So in the new YouTube Creator Studio, the subtitle menu should look something like the image on the left. And if you're in the old YouTube Creator Studio Classic, it'll look like something on the right. Both versions of the editor will allow you to place and edit subtitles at specific points of the video. If you want to check out in more detail on how to create transcripts or caption YouTube videos, feel free to follow these links on the slides in their respective support pages for more information after the presentation. And that covers some of the accessibility options for time-based media. So I'll pass the ball on to... Who am I passing the ball on to?
I think Simon is next. Yeah,
Simon's next.
Simon's next.
All right.
Is that right, Simon? This is you. Yeah, this is Simon.
Okay, I'll pass it on to Simon. Here we go.
All right, good. So let's talk about formatting and structure. As Rachel showed in her demo, while she was using the screen reader, you might have heard like adding level 1. I have the exact same voice as the guy talking in this demo, and proper use of headings will help user that use screen reader navigate the content. So by using the different level of headings, so H1, H2 up to H6, the content on your website is organized and can be easily interpreted by screen readers. So an example on the right, the H1 would be here, be thorough in your process, then H2, why this is important, and then we have sub headings after that. So like in how to meet the standard, planning and research, building and evaluating your website. This text is formatted to a way that the screen reader could easily navigate. You can also use tables, but there is a way to use tables properly. So we want to use tables to format tabular data. Like in this example here, the table have a value for every cell, and it's not used to format content. So this is something you want to avoid, using table to format content, like having an image on the left and having text on the right, just to make it like 2 columns. There are ways now in the WMS that you can use to do this instead of having a table, which should be used to basically post data that is meant to be in a table. That's my favorite Photoshop. I did that super fast the other day. It's beautiful. I think ID would be proud of me. So you want to make sure that you use descriptive links when writing for a web and then putting links. So many screen readers will read the link labels, and if you don't have any visual context, well, the users will have difficulty differentiating the different generic links. So here in this example, if you have click here, on a different spot in the same text, well, basically when that person will read this with the screen reader, it will only say click here, click here, click here, which is pretty hard to know what is behind this link, and this is why you should always describe the link as much as possible with compounds of words, basically. To facilitate the user navigation, you also want to make sure that your layouts are easy to navigate. So people using assistive devices, so here we only showed one, which is a screen reader, but there are many, many assistive devices to navigate on the web. So if you are able to make a very, very easy to navigate website, like on the right here, well, people will be able to click more easily and able to read, and it's better for users to understand this way. All right, and now I'm going to pass the ball to Joyce, and I think I got that right. I think I'm going to try to pass the ball.
Oh, I just realized I hadn't unmuted my microphone. I hope I'm not making too much noise. Thanks, Simon. So this section is me, and this might be some new information that many of you may be hearing. It is related to the accessibility standards for plain language requirements. And this is, I think, a good topic for us to tackle because I know in our environment, we deal with a lot of people that create very academic sounding content. And rightly so, that's something that people do in our environment. But there's actually some guidelines that you should follow when you're writing content specifically for the web that maybe kind of keeps things at a little bit more of a simple level in order to make it easy for people to read online. So plain language is actually a usability requirement, but it has some side benefits, including usability, improved SEO. So people use plain language when they're typing into search. So if you write your content using plain language, language, you'll actually make it easier for them to find using search. It improves comprehension, and it also improves adherence to instruction. And we have some studies, and the link is there in the slides. You'll be able to access them after the presentation, that show that professionals actually prefer plain language because it allows people to understand content very quickly. So some things that you can do to create plain language content on your site: try and write short paragraphs and sentences, and we've provided some very specific guidelines there. So paragraphs, try and keep them under 150 words. That's pretty short. That's a little bit longer than the length of a tweet. And keep it to 3 to 8 sentences, and 8 sentences might even be a little bit long. 3 sentences is probably, 3 to 5 is probably a nice sweet spot to aim for. Choose simple words. So don't say things like utilize, say a word like use instead, and choose words that are familiar to your audience. And this is a big one for all of us, especially us techie folks. Try to avoid using professional jargon and slang that other people will not be aware of the meaning for. Remove redundant words. So I often, when I'm editing my content, on my second pass, I'll see what words I can remove and still maintain the meaning of the sentences. Use the active voice, use verb tenses consistently, and use names and labels consistently. Other things you can do: be organized. So when you're writing your content, try and stick to one topic per paragraph. If you have another topic, move to another paragraph. Use bulleted or numbered lists instead of paragraphs when you're presenting list information, and put information in logical order. So make sure that the important details are at the top of the page. If you take Simon's writing for the web course, by the way, you'll hear about the inverted pyramid style, and I know a lot of you are familiar with that. That is in following with that method. So some things you can do to follow web standards for readability: expect your users to scan your content. It's unlikely they're going to read through everything very quickly. Be aware of the fact that they're probably just glancing through the page to pull out key titles and phrases. Structure your content well. Use your users' questions as headings. This helps people identify where the information is on the page that they're looking for. Format content using the inverted pyramid style. Again, you can take Simon's writing for the web course to learn more about that. For long articles, start with a summarized view. You'll see this on some sites, especially news sites, where at the top they'll have a short sentence that sums up the entire article. So if you have something complicated and long, it's good to start with a point like that. Write in a friendly tone and use pronouns like you when you are writing to speak directly to your reader. So I hope those were useful updates. I'm going to now turn it over to Heidi, who is going to get into our WMS tools for creating accessible web content. Heidi?
Hi, folks. So we're going to go over a short selection of new or improved create accessible and attractive layouts. By default, of course, everything in the WMS is designed to be accessible, but these tools can come when you're trying to add some aesthetic flair to your accessible content. So the first tool we'll discuss is call to action blocks. These let you create nicely structured layouts that are great for all kinds of audiences. By pairing images with titles, descriptors, and screen reader friendly buttons, your users have plenty of visual and textual information. And the block format groups everything together in a way that's easy to understand, using visual and programmatical cues. Next, we have statement blocks. Like call to action blocks create a clear grouping of content: title, descriptor, button, image, and build into a neat scannable hierarchy. Statement blocks put your images front and center. Great if you want to put some extra emphasis on your visual content, as long as you don't text. Next, we have ghost buttons. Ghost buttons are a great way to add visual emphasis on important links or actions, and they're more accessible than linked images. Users can read, enlarge, or hear the button label, and the buttons hover in active states are really handy. They can provide useful cues. They confirm that the item is clickable, they let users know when it's selected, and help users with limited or low vision to orient themselves on the page. A picture masquerading as a button cannot do any of those things. Finally, typography is a great way to spice up a layout. The Big Numbers feature lets you create typography-driven presentations of short phrases, facts, statistics, and other content, not just numbers. As with ghost buttons, the Big Numbers feature can be read by screen readers and easily manipulated by users who want to enlarge or select content. But the power of Big Numbers lies in its responsible use. Using Big Numbers as headings, for example, won't help a screen reader accurately understand the structure of your page. With this section, of course, all features available in the WMS are designed to be accessible and attractive, and I encourage you to be creative and be responsible. Using features as intended is better for your audience, and it helps us as we improve the accessibility and overall user experience over time. So now I'll pass things back over to Simon for some additional considerations for vHost and other non-WMS. Oh, hang on while I figure out how to pass it back to Simon. There we go. Go, Simon.
Yes, that small animation is running us crazy, I guess. Because when you pass the ball, anyway. We'll demo that in another meeting of an hour long on how to use WebEx for events, I guess. All right, so, whoa. Yes, okay. Sorry. So other site design considerations. So if you're building a website in a vHost environment, so a non-WMS site, it could be a WordPress server, a Hugo server, millions of servers we have nowadays. Be mindful to have and respect these guidelines. So you want to make sure to have a contrast ratio that highlights the text by having a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. That means that the text is clearly visible, and if you have text over images or over color, well, people can read them easily. You also want to make sure that you follow some text formatting here, so that the line 8 is about 1.5 times the font size, that you add spacing following paragraph at least 2 times the font size, the letter spacing, so the tracking between the letters is needs to be at least 0.12 times the font size, word spacing, and also you want to make sure that the text can be resized without assistive technology. So when you do Control or Command plus, or if you go and you click zoom, well, you should be able to resize the font without having to use the zoom function or the I'm just forgetting my English here. The loop, the loop function. Does that make sense? All right. Site operation consideration. So there's a good thing that you can do to make sure that your site is accessible is try to use it with only your keyboard. So if all functionalities are available from a keyboard, all that is always a good sign that your website is easy to navigate. And also people that use your website without having a keyword, so try to use your website only using a pointer. That's also a good challenge if you want to navigate your site. Another thing you can do is obviously help user avoid incorrect mistakes when they use web forms. So by having text that shows what is the error that person made while trying to fill the web forms, and not only rely on colors, as was previously mentioned. Because if you only use color to make to indicate to the user that error was made, well, if that person is colorblind, that's not really helping. So with the new accessibility guidelines from the government of Quebec, all web page must display a link to an accessibility page with the list and name, the list of technology you use to test conformity of the site with the different guidelines listed in the government standard. So we have that on the WMS on all pages now. If you use a VOS system, well, you can use the same technology that we use, and if you are also using the same icons, well, you can link to our own page, and we'll try to keep it up to date. Usually, we need to keep it up to date every 12 months, but we'll try to keep it up to date on a regular basis, more than every year. So this page includes a link to the government standards. So if you never read these standards, or there's a link. So I recommend that you just have a look. We did not found an English version, so I guess I can translate if possible. There's a validation tool that we use to evaluate McGill website. So we recommend Chrome plugins here, but they're also available in Firefox. There's VoiceOver on Mac, whatever Mac version you're using, and there are many different validation tools. If you want to use them on your VOS website, just make sure that you include them in your accessibility page if you create your own. Make sure you list the icons. So we try to list as much as possible all the icons we have on the McGill website. And we also included an assistant form. So if people have trouble with the website, they can contact us, and then we'll try to fix the issues as soon as possible. So as previously mentioned, super important that this page appears in somewhere on your page, usually in the footer on all your on your website, on all pages. All right, so back to Rachel now. I think that's the last stretch. Am I mistaken? Try to pass the ball.
All right. So I've seen a ton of questions come in the Q&A. We've been answering them. Thank you so much for your engagement. I'm going to talk a little bit about the government standards. Woohoo! Exciting topic. So we say new, as in they're not actually new, but we are making an increased effort to make sure that our sites are compliant, and they may be new to you. So that's important for you to be aware of, that there is legislation governing web accessibility that universities are expected to comply to according to the government of Quebec. So we've published the standards. You can find the standards sur l'accessibilité des sites web on linked here, and also on the accessibility link on the footer of every WMS web page. And so you know, the deadline for compliance, so any new websites or new web pages that you're publishing as of 2018, as of 2020, so July of last year, all of them should comply to these standards. So anything that you're creating has to integrate these standards that we're talking about today. And you have until July 2022 to remediate any archived content, well, not archived, but older, previously published content on your WMS site. So this is anything that was created before 2018. You have until July 2022 to make sure that it's accessible. These guidelines set forth by the government of Quebec are based on kind of more global guidelines that are called the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They refer to many different elements of these guidelines as their standard baseline. So the compliance needs to be with the WCAG 2.0. They just are announcing a draft of the 3.0. So this is exciting time to be thinking about web accessibility, and the publishing body is the World Wide Web Consortium, which is the main international standards organization for the internet. Instead of like spending all this time reading through the legal documents and trying to figure out what you do or don't have to do, we've made it easy for you. All web pages and content need to meet the AA standard of compliance with a couple of exceptions. So if you're posting pre-recorded audio, you need to provide captioning or sign language interpretation. In Quebec, that would have to be LSQ, Langage des signes québécois. You don't have to do both. Captioning is not yet required for live events, although it is a best practice, and I highly encourage you to do it. Audio descriptions of video content are not mandatory. You can provide either audio or an alternative media. So there are a few choices. In addition, the government Quebec standards say that there are 2 AAA, so that's a higher level of compliance that needs to be met. So the first one is that it's 2.3.2. All these numbers refer to specific elements of the guidelines, so you can go back and refer to them. But you can't have anything on your website that flashes more than 3 times per second. So a GIF might be problematic if you're using that on your website. And you have to have a mechanism for expanding abbreviations. So making sure that any acronyms that you're using are defined on your web page and can be easily understood. So this is really important whether you're in WMS, whether you're in vhost or another server. And what's nice is that Web Services at McGill has made things easier for you. If you are working in WMS, you really need to focus on your content rather than the overall structure of the page. If you're not in WMS, you have a little bit more work to do, but they're here to support. I'm going to pass the ball to Joyce, and I think I got it right this time, to close us off. Joyce, you're on mute.
It's easy to miss that. Thanks, Rachel. So I hope everyone found that helpful. We tried to include content that was requested by the community. We realized in our previous announcements and events that we were missing some of the more human angles and some additional detail about accessibility. So we're hopefully have filled that out a little bit more for you. There is, as you might remember, the hackathon coming up. So we do have opportunities for additional support there if you feel like you want to get more of a one-on-one kind of assistance with your site. So here are some things you can do now that you've attended our info session. We recommend that you check your website, so your images, your video, and other media on your site for alt text. As Rachel mentioned, in the WMS, this is really your main consideration because a lot of the other things are covered off for you. So check for those things. You should also check to make sure your page is structured properly. So that section that Simon got into, I don't know who Hyman is. That Simon got into concerning a proper use of headings and making sure that your content is structured properly. Check your pages for that as well. Those evaluation tools that were mentioned in terms of the Chrome checker and other evaluation tools, those tools will help you identify how a page is structured and if it's structured well. But you can also, at a glance, I think, determine those things. Make sure you're using the WMS features to format visual content in an accessible manner. So if you're using maybe some things that are non-accessible or questionably accessible to format your content currently, use the existing WMS tools. So the WMS tools that allow you to create more visually interesting content, like big numbers and the statement block and the button tool, those things are accessible. So make sure you use those tools. Ensure your content follows those plain language guidelines that we talked about. There's a link that's linked there to content and information on our website. Familiarize yourself with the WCAG requirements, and there's the link there is actually to like a simple checklist version. It is a big document, but I would encourage you to check it out and make sure you're aware of all the requirements. That's especially important, by the way, for people that have vHost sites and non-WMS sites, because as Rachel mentioned, you're going to have to cover off some extra things that are taken care of for you in the WMS. And attend our accessibility hackathon on February 25th to get assistance in making your site accessible from web team or web services team members. So our team, the web service group of team members will be there. I'm hoping some of the IT trainers will be there as well. So we'll have a big group of people. We weren't expecting we were going to have so many people sign up for this event when we initially created it, but we're recruiting extra hands on deck to help out. So you'll be able to get that more hands-on help. And what we're going to do, I think we're going to organize it as a series of breakout rooms that you can drop into that will be categorized based on different topics. So there'll be an alt text room, there'll be a room for video captioning, there'll be a room for evaluating your website. So we'll have a bunch of different areas that will be covered there. So I think that is about it. We'll get into questions. So if anyone has any questions, I see there's one on there already. Can you also help with a WordPress site? So we have our centrally supported systems like the WMS and our blogs.mcgill.ca site. Blogs.mcgill.ca is in WordPress, so we can help with that. But if you have a vHost site or a non-official WMS or a non-official McGill site, you don't really have access to the centrally supported tools in general, but we can help you with best practices. So if you come to the hackathon, or if you can ask us questions, and we can help you with what is the best practice, but we can't help you from a technical perspective, make changes to your website. I don't know if anyone has any additional comments to add there in terms of what that's part of the draw of going with the centrally supported tools, because if you go with the centrally supported tools, you're going to have access to detailed support and in-depth support to help you do your things carefully. If you go with a non-centrally supported tool, you're kind of taking on a bit of responsibility there, following up on these things by yourself. But we, again, can help you understand what the best practices that you should do. Good. All right. More questions. I see Karen has one. Oh, Karen, I don't think we entered. You entered the end of your question. It's just, is there an? Is there a? Or, oh, all answered. Oh, good. Okay. So while we're waiting for other questions, oh, there's a question. How will you reach out to the many vHost sites to ensure that accessibility standards are indeed applied? So we are reaching out. So you got this email, the invite to this event, through an email that we sent to the website managers and editors group. We also sent that email to the vHost group, and we're also making efforts to connect with them. We find that they're a less responsive crowd, though. We do have some additional tools that are coming up for use, and Heidi, maybe you can speak to these, the design components that we're hoping will kind of bring the vHost folks into the fold. But so far, we are trying to reach out to them and communicate with them, but they're not very responsive. So we'll continue to make effort and send out emails and send out announcements and try and drive them to the web services site. But yes, hopefully they'll start to pay attention. I hope that answers your question, Jennifer. And Heidi, do you want to speak about the components a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, one of the challenging thing about the vHost sites is that they're often built in a one-off way, and the ongoing support isn't always there. So one of the things that we're hoping to do with the design system is offer actual code that vHost site builders can use on their sites. Sorry, Pilar has decided she's interested in this question. The developers of vHost sites can use to make sure that their sites are brand compliant, and it should also save them some time in building the sites. The other upside of that is that the sites are built in a consistent and accessible way. So it becomes then a little bit easier for another developer to step in and fix things, or for the site itself to just be in and maintain compliance going forward. So it wouldn't necessarily, sorry, my cat is really, really into my waving hands right now. So it wouldn't necessarily be like an out-of-the-box easy solution, but it would be a toolkit that developers can use to make compliance a little bit easier and more efficient.
Thanks, Heidi. I see there's a question here about YouTube and transcriptions. Daniel, do you want to take a stab at answering that one? It's from Nina in the chat.
I'm not sure if I see it.
She's asking if transcriptions are automatically available and what people need to do to set it up. And it looks like she already has a YouTube account.
Okay. It should be automatically captioned. You can go into the Creator Studio to check if it is. Yeah, it should caption it by itself, and then you can edit it manually if there's any like mistakes with the automatically generated one. But yeah, I don't think there's anything specific that you need to do to set it up.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. And Nina, if you continue to have questions or you feel you need additional assistance to that, I'd encourage you to come to the hackathon. Daniel is going to be facilitating the room about captioning, and he'll be able to look at what you're working on in person. So I see another question here from Kristen. Hi, Kristen, about accessibility guidelines laws in Quebec and how they apply to private websites. I think, Rachel, that might be a question for you to field.
Yeah, so I responded, universities are, as far as my consultation with the government has gone, universities are responsible for their own websites. So a private third-party website that you're linking to is probably in a gray zone. However, I always encourage people to do the steps to minimize that risk and also optimize accessibility to begin with, even if it's not in the WMS, because A, that's best practice, but also will help eliminate any like variations in the interpretations of the standards. And as I've seen, both in Quebec and nationwide, there is a movement towards accessibility being in the web being a standard across places, not just in public institutions. So even if it's not it may be in a gray zone now. I don't think it'll be gray zone for very long.
Good, and that's a good point. And it's come up a few times that because the deadlines for the standard have just passed, that there's still some things that are being worked out in terms of the process and how the government will follow up, and what the checks and balances are going to be and the penalties. But we know that there are more defined processes and checks and balances and penalties in place in other parts of the world and in other provinces. And we're expecting that these things will be monitored, in a much more organized manner in the near future. So it looks like that's all the questions that we're getting, which is great because we are pretty much right on time with wrapping up our presentation. Rachel, do you want to mention quickly your meeting? I've talked a lot about the hackathon already, but your other info session?
Yes, so I'm very excited because I'm going to be inviting Joyce and Simon to do a lunchtime, like lunch and learn webinar on website accessibility. So if you have colleagues, and this is not necessarily specific to the WMS, it's, using the best practices and tools and being able to carry that forward in your own work. So if you want to invite those researchers, those faculty members who are having their websites, if there's anyone who could benefit, I'll put that in the chat, and we'll also, you can look for the link to that in upcoming editions of the What's New. In the meantime, you can stay tuned and know that that's a second level of kind of awareness that we're working on in terms of getting everyone the information that they need to make these changes and move forward with becoming and continuing to be an inclusive and accessible university.
Fantastic. So yes, lots of opportunities to learn more about accessibility. And another quick little plug, if you are interested, we also have received requests from the community to do similar sessions like this on other topics that are related to other categories of our digital standards. So keep an eye on our web services site for other chances to participate in info sessions and hackathon events moving forward. So I think that's it. So I'll wrap it up. Again, thank you everyone for attending. We'll be sending out an email shortly with a link to the slides and a link to the other resources. I did want to mention there's a whole bunch of other resources at the end of the slides here. A lot of the things we talked about are here, so you can click to them from these links. So thanks everyone. When is the lunch meeting? When is the lunch meeting, Rachel? I think there's a question in the chat.
I put the link in the chat, and he also answered, so you have that. It's on March 3rd.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good lunch. Bye.